What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. It's still NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament time, as the Division I tournament has 16 teams left. Which teams have been sent packing, and which teams are still standing, and which teams managed to surprise me over the weekend. And the NCAA Division II Women's Volleyball Tournament is down to 8 teams, as 64 teams entered and over 7/8 have been dismissed. Which teams are standing, and who will be helping me talk some Division II Women's Volleyball? Also, there will be a little bit of a preview on some of the Division I and Division II Women's Volleyball Tournament games. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you all up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Hope you all are having an amazing day. Welcome to Set Point episode 119, as we are in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I tournament and the Elite 8 in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II tournament. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have a guest, as this guest has been on Set Point for the past 3 episodes. Well, not most recently, but he's been on for 3 episodes, and he has a vast, amazing knowledge of NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II, and he was at some of the matches this past week. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming him back for the 3rd time is Mr. Derryl Trujillo. How you doing, Derryl?
Hey, Teran. Just watching some Last Man Standing. Thought you were going to break down some Division II stuff, and thought I'd hop on with you.
Hey, it's great to have you on, Derryl, and thank you for taking time out of your day. I am glad to have you on because you were at some of these NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II matches, so yeah, I think your expertise is going to help with this show, and it's going to enhance all the listeners that NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II is just as good as NCAA Division I volleyball. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, just need to disclaim everything that these are the thoughts and opinions of myself and Derryl Trujillo, and not of any second or third party organizations. These aren't the thoughts of IE Sports Radio or any other third or fourth party organization that we are affiliated with. So, looking at the Division II bracket, the thing that stands out to me is that there are no more number 1 seeds. Every number 1 seed in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II tournament has been bounced, which was quite surprising. And one of the number 1 seeds that did get eliminated was Cal State San Bernardino. And I hope this isn't the Set Point curse, but unfortunately, that was the school of guest Kim Chernis, who was on last week. So, Derryl, you were at this match. How surprised were you when it came to San Bernardino losing in the round of 32?
Okay, LA is a really good, solid program. Juan Figueroa's done a nice job over there of taking them to the next level. But that being said, you know, Kim Chernis said it best in the press room. On an off night, any one of those 7 other teams could have beaten us, and the numbers speak for themselves. It was an off night for the Yotes and a really hot night, especially on the block for the Golden Eagles. And I think the story just speaks for itself. LA hit 168 to the Yotes 034. 12. They were even on the block, but it just seemed like Cal State San Bernardino had a really, really hard time terminating against Cal State LA on Friday night.
Yeah, and you look at Cal State LA, they actually had to get past a tough Cal Poly Pomona team, which beat them twice prior. But this just goes to show you it's very tough to beat a team 3 or 4 times in one season. Like, you really have to have that consistency, especially if you meet up with them in the NCAA tournament. Like, it's really just that difficult. So I give props to Cal State LA on them getting past Pomona and getting past San Bernardino. So that's some great stuff right there. Unfortunately for LA, they lost to Western Washington, which was the number 6 seed. Or, I'm sorry, not number 2 seed in the division. So, Derryl, what can you say about Western Washington and what stood out to you when it came to Western Washington?
Western is a veteran squad. They've been to the regional. They've been to the national championship tournament stage. So when they got down big in those first 2 sets, I'm not shocked that they dug themselves out. The way they did it was a little interesting. I mean, I think it was like an 8-2 run to end one set and a 7-2 run to end the second set. But Western draws upon the experiences they've had, just like every other team. And Western, despite being the GNAC champion, did not have a sweep in GNAC play until the second time through, according to their coach, Diane Flick-Williams, in the press room. And losing those sets taught them how to, fight back from early deficits and, all those things that you learn on the way to winning a regional championship like this.
Yeah, and I give them a lot of credit for all that they did due to the fact that they were actually ranked in the most recent coaches poll. Yes, it was a couple weeks ago. They were ranked 13th. And currently right now when it comes to the Elite 8, when it comes to the ranked teams, there are only 4 remaining teams that were ranked in the current AVCA coaches poll from 2 weeks ago. And those 4 teams are Tampa, Hillsdale, Western Washington, and Washburn. The other 4 teams that aren't ranked are Augusta, Gannon, Damon, and West Texas A&M. So those are your Elite 8 teams. And also, something else that I pointed out earlier was that every number 1 seed got eliminated, and there are no more remaining number 1 seeds. So how much parity do you think there was in this NCAA women's volleyball tournament, and how surprising is it to see not one seed make it out of the round of 16?
I mean, that right there shows you just how good women's volleyball has gotten at the Division II level nationwide. I mean, we were in the press room on Saturday night. We'd finished with Cal State LA's presser, and then Chelsea Herman from Cal State San Bernardino, the senior women's administrator, came in. She'd just gotten a text that all 8 number 1s had been bounced, and we just all, those of us who were in the press room just looked at each other like, that's got to be some kind of record, in the format that Division II uses. I can't think of it happening in the handful of years I've been around Division II volleyball, but I mean, who knows? That right there shows you A, parity, and B, just how resilient and good the coaching has been from these teams, having to fight through, COVID and not having 2020 national championship tournament and all those things.
It also just goes to show that the postseason is a totally different animal, and that when the postseason starts, everyone's 0-0. Nobody cares what you did in the regular season, and all that is basically irrelevant when it comes to the regular season, because now the postseason, everyone has a clean slate, and it's basically win or go home. And if you haven't really witnessed defeat, or if you haven't really experienced a loss in the regular season other than the Cal State San Bernardino 2019 team that went undefeated, then it can be tough when you realize that you haven't experienced loss or a turning point in this season, and when it comes to losing, you could possibly be on the wrong side of the score if you aren't familiar with losing, because you learn more from a loss than you do a win, as the old saying goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And for LA, they're going to lose their top two attackers, but I think this was a big year for Juan Figueroa in his quest to climb the mountain and bring the Golden Eagles to the top of the CCAA. They were 0-11 in matches against Cal State San Bernardino, CC2A tournament or otherwise, prior to that Friday night win. They had not won a regional tournament match under Figueroa prior to Thursday night's win over Pomona.
That's very surprising. I did not know that, and the fact that LA had broken a lot of records or barriers, it's quite astounding. Something to note for the NCAA women's volleyball bracket format is that they use 8 certain regions. They use the Atlantic region, Central region, East region, Midwest region, South region, Southeast region, South Central region, and the West region. So currently, like I said, there are eight teams remaining, and this week is the last week of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II season, as the 8 remaining teams will be playing in Tampa, Florida at the Bob Martinez Athletic Center. And believe it or not, Tampa, which is surprisingly the host school, they're actually the number 1 seed, which is very surprising. And I don't know how much it means for them to have home court advantage, but it must mean a lot. So what can you say about Tampa having a home field advantage for the most part, Derryl?
Oh, yeah. It goes back to the things Kim Chernus talked about when, given the opportunity to host a regional. Your kids are in their own beds. They don't miss a whole heck of a lot of class time. They're not, flying, across the country, like Western, who will leave tomorrow morning for Tampa after flying in Sunday morning. It goes back to being able to control the controllables outside of volleyball. You're going to eat at places you're familiar with. You're going to know where everything is. You're going to know what the gym looks like, the optics around the gym, and all those things. And not just have one, a 55-minute practice the day before the first match to get acclimated.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, the Tampa wasn't even the number 1 seed that came out of their own region. The number 1 seed from their region was West Florida, who was 33-1 going into the tournament. They eventually finished their season 36-2, which the loss came at the hands of Tampa in the regional final. So actually, they were 35-2. My apologies. My math was a little off, but Tampa did really impress me, and it's always those interstate rivalries or interstate matches that can definitely bring out the best in any team, kind of like Pitt and Penn State, but that's for another topic. But all in all, for the Division II Elite 8, I think it's up for grabs. Any one of these teams can win it all, including West Texas A&M, which surprisingly was the 7 seed, but now they have risen like the phoenix from the ashes. It's rather surprising, considering both of their wins in this tournament, or 2 out of their 3 wins, have come via 5 sets, while one of their other matches came via 4 sets. So, were there any surprise teams in the tournament for better or for good, in your opinion, Derryl?
Honestly, we just kept an eye on our region, and
we
didn't really keep an eye on the national stage until we got that information relayed to us that all 8 number 1s fell. That's my biggest takeaway for the weekend, is just how good Division II volleyball is nationally, not just in the West region. But on a national stage, you look around and there are some D2s that could probably beat some lower echelon D1s.
Yeah, I totally agree. And who knows? Maybe we could have like some sort of like crossover match with the Division I taking on a Division II, kind of like how the FBS takes on the FCS in football, and then Division I schools take on Division II schools when it comes to men's and women's basketball. So that could be quite an idea for some teams. Maybe they'll count it as a scrimmage, yes, but it's always good to get that familiarity. So that could be an idea for NCAA women's volleyball, in my opinion. My
biggest suggestion, if there's anybody from the NCAA championships department listening to this podcast, please, the local media representatives, especially those of us who cover all 4 matches in a day on that first day of the Division II tournament, please allow the first quarterfinal to start at 11 a.m. Thursday, we had 4 fours and still didn't leave until, oh, good Lord, I think it was 11 o'clock, 10:45, something like that.
Yeah, that's brutal right there. Continue.
Yeah, and that's because, between matches, they have a minimum 40-minute warm-up time between matches that they have to adhere to. So if the teams have a minimum warm-up time, please put that extra hour in for the local beat writers that are covering your regionals, just so that we're not getting home at 11 o'clock or midnight.
Yeah, that would be rather brutal, and I'm totally against, 8 p.m. or late matches. Any match that's, later than, 7 or 7:30, no, I cannot deal with that. Just because, first of all, NCAA volleyball matches at the most probably take, maybe 90 minutes at the fewest, and maybe, 3 hours at the most. And that's no jock, but I totally agree with you. I think when it comes to certain times, it should be a little bit more spread out or something along those lines.
Well, they budgeted 2.5 hours per match, and we were within 10 or 15 minutes of the start time on most matches. But when you throw in that 40-minute warm up, and then all 4 matches being fours, it makes for a very long day. I had a lot of fun this weekend being at Cal State San Bernardino, and kudos to Brian Gall, Chelsea Herman, Sean Chin Farrell, the entire Cal State San Bernardino staff. They did a great job this weekend running that regional with 4 CC2A basketball games also on the weekend that they had to opt to pull off too.
Yeah, and I commend you for covering all of those first-round games, because, like you said, all of those games were not sweeps. They were actually all of those matches went 4 sets, and the only sweeps that occurred were between LA and San Bernardino, and then Western Washington and LA. So, all in all, I totally would like for everything to be spread out, but I do give kudos for you when it comes to covering all those matches that late at night. So there's that right there. So as for the remaining 8 teams, I know you haven't really looked at the other regions, but who do you think has the best chance at winning when it comes to those 8 teams?
Honestly, for me, I'm going to root for our West region team. I want to see Western get their redemption from the last time they were in the national championship tournament in 2018 when they won in Bellingham the regional title, flew out and lost in a regional or in the NC2A national championship tournament. I want to see them get their redemption.
Yeah, I think Western Washington has a good shot as well. Tampa, in my opinion, I think they have a very good chance just because, well, they're the home school, and the last time a Tampa sports team hosted a championship, that Tampa sports team kind of won. And I believe that was the Tampa Bay Lightning, if not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Tampa is starting to do good in all sorts of sports, and if you're a Tampa fan, you got to be loving this right about now. And I know Tampa isn't necessarily Division I, but you got to love it if you're a Tampa fan.
Oh yeah, and if you happen to be a Tampa resident listening to this at 7:30 at night Eastern time, you're looking for something to do Thursday, head out to the Bob Martinez Center and take in some of those matches over the course of the week.
Yeah, and it also give you it also inform you how amazing volleyball is, considering it's a very underrated sport and it's a little underappreciated, and I think it deserves some of their matches deserve to be nationally televised, including the Division II final. No matter who it is, whether it's Tampa versus Western Washington or West Texas A&M versus Gannon, I don't care. I would like to see that nationally televised, whether it's on ESPN2 or heck, even ABC or whatnot. So, all in all, I think the NCAA Division II Volleyball Championship is going to be fun. And I definitely have to thank you for keep informing me of this when you first came on as a guest. So, I would have just talked more NCAA Division I, but now my eyes have been open to Division II, and Division II does not play any games, because I saw most of those live streams with the San Bernardino matchup and the Pomona LA matchup. So it was quite nice seeing a different change of pace of NCAA volleyball.
And really, there's not much of a difference between D2 and, a high-level D2 and a lower echelon D1 or even a middle echelon D1. The athletes are just as good. The level of play is pretty daggone close to what you'd see there. The physicality, the skill sets, the long rallies. I mean, there was that one long rally you pointed out in, the Pomona and LA match from the first night?
I think so, yeah.
And you see the same crowd reactions. You see good quality venues that deserve to be, tournament hosts like Casulas Arena. You see, kids more often than not paying to play the sport that they love, and that's what keeps Kim Chernis around. She mentioned that in the presser, and I think it was 17. And how did she put it? There's nothing like the heart of a D2 student athlete, because more often than not, they are paying a majority of their way to play.
Yeah, and I think whether you're playing at the Division II level or the junior college level or the NAIA level, I think you're a solid volleyball player or a good volleyball player, just because not a whole lot of players want to play at the Division I level or the collegiate level in general, just because you have to make sacrifices and you have to balance out time. So I commend all the NCAA athletes in terms of volleyball and any sport at any level. So something I do need to make note of is that I think one of the reasons why NCAA Division II volleyball isn't as, let's say, popular as Division I is because they don't get the national televised matches that some of these Division I matches get. Like last year there was Kansas State and Texas and Notre Dame and Pitt, and then this year there was Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Penn State, Purdue. And so I think for those that don't have ESPNU, kind of like myself, or ESPN Plus, like, it's kind of a big disadvantage, and it kind of hurts them in that aspect.
Yeah, whereas in Division II, you're dealing with regionalized, conference networks, but they're all, it's basically institutional live streams tied to a central website. Or in the case of the Division II National Championship Tournament, the live stream is put on by the NCAA through the NCAA app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then obviously those apps can be a little confusing sometimes. So all in all, I think NCAA Division II volleyball is amazing, and it deserves the same props as Division I, and same can be said for all the others, because like I said with Kim Chernis, hopefully everyone does take in the fact that women's volleyball is starting to grow, and that in case everyone forgot, our United States women's volleyball teams, whether it was the sitting team, the beach volleyball team, or the indoor team, all won gold medals. So that's something else someone needs to take note of when it comes to nationally televising some of these matches.
Yeah, and you're right. The D2 finals need to be on a national television platform. I wonder what it would take to make that happen in terms of additional, revenue or whatnot. Because, there's nothing wrong with the quality of stream that Turner puts on for the NCAA. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same as having a Karch Karai or a Holly McPeak call your match.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And it just doesn't have that same vibe and whatnot. Nothing against some of these other commentators and whatnot, but I think it would just have a better vibe with like an actual like volleyball player or coach that has experience, or that someone else has experience watching volleyball. So
yeah, like a Courtney Lyle and a Jenny Hazelwood getting together and doing the D2 final or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So all in all, that's pretty much a good gist of our little takes on NCAA women's volleyball in terms of Division II. Is there anything else you want to discuss when it comes to that, or anything else pop out at you before we begin to wrap up?
No, I mean, we hit on all 8 number ones failing to reach Tampa. We hit on LA breaking through the barrier under Figueroa. We hit on Western's quest for redemption now that they've won the regional in San Bernardino, and kind of how the week looks for those teams that make it. I think we pretty much hit on everything.
Yeah, and then we also talked Tampa being the host, having that home court advantage, and some of the other teams that have broken through, like West Texas A&M broke through, and they're in the Elite Eight and whatnot. So I think this whole Elite Eight is up for grabs, and I would not be surprised to see if the final consisted of a 7 seed versus an 8 seed. Like, I'm not going to guarantee it just because I admit I'm not the most knowledgeable at NCAA Division II women's volleyball, but I will say that when it comes to the postseason, anything is possible. So, yeah.
And it would be interesting to see if somebody could dig through the regional records, if this is the first time that has happened, where all 8 number ones have failed to reach Tampa, or wherever the national championship tournament is being held that particular year.
Uh-huh.
I would just be curious to know that factoid. Who knows, maybe I'll start digging through it later in the week, but as we get closer to Thursday.
Yeah, I'd probably dig through it like after the show or later on as the night progresses, or I'd probably have that up tomorrow. So, yeah, that's probably going to be our homework assignment to make sure most people know if this is the first time that all the number 1 seeds in the NCAA Division II tournament have been knocked out before the Elite Eight. So that's going to be our homework assignment, and that pretty much will do it for the NCAA Division II women's volleyball segment. Once again, Derryl, thank you for coming on, and thank you for your coverage of the Western region. Like, I was going to go to it, but unfortunately other things came in the way and got in the way, and it was also my birthday weekend, and I also had other things in terms of work. So Derryl, how could these nice people on the interweb reach you or see your work?
I'm Derryl_golfer on Twitter, Derryl Trujillo on Instagram, and then stories inlandsports.wordpress.com.
Excellent, Derryl. So thank you once again for coming on. We'll take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, I'll be discussing some NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II or Division I action. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' a NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' a NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Tarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Rose Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea They are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Big shout out to Derryl Trujillo once again for popping on Set Point. It is greatly appreciated, and your knowledge of Division II volleyball knows no bounds. Also, I appreciate you talking it with me, just because I admittingly don't know too much about NCAA Division II volleyball until about 3 or 4 weeks ago when he brought it up. So, all in all, it's great talking some volleyball with Derryl. So, now, A for the delay, let's get back into the volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have some sponsors we have to go over. So, the first sponsor for IE Sports Radio is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, you definitely need to give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get the second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California Warriors. And they're really cool people. Big shout out to Coach Oki and Larry B., who is a member of the SoCal Warriors. So the second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Fremen take care of that for you. Kit has founded and managed Background Check International since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. Just as a disclaimer, this business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. They do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces by typing in the word Background Check International, then dash, then BCI. And then they have their own website, www.bcint.com. And IE Sports Radio is on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And they have Facebook as you could type in the word IE, then sports, then radio. And they also have their website, www.iesportsradio.com. And for the last 7.5 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviews from legendary athletes or coaches or news beat reporters to building tailor-made shows dedicated to major sports cities around the country. All the while we've been continued to be for the fans, by the fans, and vice versa. And with your help, we are here to take that next step. When you go to the IE Sports Radio website, you can see there's a Patreon link of 5 different tiers. The first one starts out at $5 a month, and this donation gets you a shout-out from all 27 shows. That's right, all 27 shows, including this one. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on the show that has made IE Sports Radio pretty much what it is, The Defining Moment. Thank you, everyone, for all of your support and for helping make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. We also have to give a quick shout-out to the fan of the month for IE Sports Radio, Turban Patriot. He is a really cool New England Patriots fan. He is an all-around great Boston sports guy, and he's been a judge on 3 and Out along with myself. And he's just an all-around down-to-earth guy. So thank you to Turban Patriot. And then also our sponsors for Patreon in terms of IE Sports Radio are Bay Area Raised Apparel and Marcus Losgreat. The Marcus Losgreat, who's here to give you what you want, and he's here to give you what you need. And you heard his drop on the commercials, and definitely do show Marcus Losgren and Bay Area Apparel some love. So now that we have that all said and done, let's get on into some NCAA Division I volleyball, because I'm kind of on a time crunch because I have somewhere I need to be. So let's start with the NIVC. So when it comes to the NIVC, they are in the quarterfinals, as I know most people don't really care for the NIVC, but to me, I've always cared. I've pretty much cared. I hate to be this guy, but I kind of forgot the NIVC was going on just because there's a lot of volleyball going on with Division II, then Division I, and then there was the NIVC. And also not too many teams that I was familiar with made it to the tournament, because I thought I'd see at least one of my teams, like Long Beach State or UC Santa Barbara, make it. On the bright side, Cal State Bakersfield made it, but unfortunately they lost in the first round. So the quarterfinalists for the NIVC are Arkansas, UNLV, Weber State, UTEP, Evansville, Valparaiso, North Florida, and UConn. So Arkansas defeated Stephen F. Austin in the round of 32 after they had a bye. And then UNLV defeated New Mexico State in 3 sets. And they also outlasted Arizona in 5 sets, which was quite surprising. Arizona has some darn good players, and they also have that win over Stanford. So even though the win over Stanford, their opponent didn't have all their players, but still, it's impressive that UNLV pulled out that win. So elsewhere we have Weber State in the quarterfinal. They defeated Bakersfield in 4 sets, and then they also defeated Portland State in 4 sets. And then UTEP defeated Tulsa in 4 sets, and they defeated Colorado State in 4 sets as well. On the other side of the bracket, we have Evansville in the quarterfinals, as they defeated Sam Houston State in 3 sets, and they defeated Bradley in 4 sets. And Valparaiso is on the other side of them, as they'll face Evansville in the quarterfinal after they defeated Butler in 3 sets and Toledo in 3 sets. On the lower right side of the bracket, we have North Florida, as they won via a no contest from UNC Greensboro, which that's kind of sucky. I am actually sad that happened, but I digress. North Florida then beat Troy in the round of 32, as they are now in the quarterfinals. Actually, that was the round of 16. My apologies. It's a 32-team bracket, and the first round is the round of 32. Second round is the round of 16, and then it goes quarterfinals, semifinals, then finals. So North Florida defeated Troy in 3 sets, and North Florida will take on UConn, the team that beat Creighton this year. UConn defeated North Carolina A&T in 3 sets in the first round, and then in the Sweet 16, UConn defeated Boston College in 5 sets, which was quite the impressive victory. It was the battle from up east. So UConn will take on Florida in the quarterfinals for a spot in the semifinals, and I look forward to it. I think, to me, Arkansas will win the NIVC. I know it's a little early, and I know I don't know much about some of these teams, but Arkansas looks like the most impressive team, just because Arkansas could have made the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they just lost at the worst time, and they didn't really have that standoutish win that made them say, this team deserves to be in the NCAA tournament. So I still think Arkansas wins the NIVC. UNLV will be a tough matchup, though. So, and then if I had to choose their finalists, I think UConn makes the final, just because UConn is very impressive. This has been quite the special year. They hadn't beaten a ranked opponent until this year when they defeated Creighton in 5. I think UConn has been quite impressive. That Big East conference has really battle-tested them. Defeating Boston College was a huge win. They will have to take down a very tough Florida team, so we'll see if they can do that. But I have confidence in UConn. They're not just a women's basketball school. They're not just a basketball school in general. They are a good women's volleyball school as well, and they will prove it, hopefully. All right, so that is going to do it for the NIVC. I just wanted to get that out of the way just because I wanted to cover all the volleyball that's going on right now. So now let's jump to the granddaddy of them all, the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I bracket. So 64 teams entered, and now only 16 remain. So the teams that remained, or the teams in the Sweet 16, are Louisville versus Florida, or 1 seed Louisville versus 16 seed Florida, 9 seed Ohio State versus 8 seed Georgia Tech, 5 seed Baylor versus 12 seed Minnesota, 13 seed UCLA versus 4 seed Wisconsin, 3 seed Pittsburgh versus Kansas, 11 seed BYU versus 6 seed Purdue, Illinois versus 10 seed Nebraska, and 15 seed Washington versus Texas. So the only 2 teams that were ranked are unfortunately out, as Creighton and Kentucky, the reigning NCAA champion, they unfortunately got bounced. As we welcome Brad Buckingham in the chat room, he says, "Go Huskies." Yes, Huskies, they are in the Sweet 16. They'll be taking on the number 2 seed Texas. I'll be getting into that in a little bit, but now that Brad's here, I actually do need to go over one matchup that Kansas unfortunately had to win. And this, I think, surprised everybody. The matchup that I'm going to recap is Kansas versus Oregon. So I did not know that Kansas was this good. I knew Kansas was somewhat legit, but they did not have a standout-ish win that made them say, we can go deep into the tournament. They almost beat Texas as they went up 2-0 in the sets, but then they got reverse swept by Texas because Texas is that good. But this Kansas team has come out of nowhere. This Kansas team is turning it back to 2015 when it made the Final Four. My goodness. So the first team that Kansas beat in the round of 64 was Oregon. And I'm sorry, Brad, Kansas did unfortunately beat Oregon, as they won at Creighton because Creighton was the host school and they were the 14th seed at the time. So Kansas won the first set 25-21 and the second set 25-21 and then the third set 25-22. The scary thing about this is because Oregon was so battle-tested. In the Pac-12, they had so many amazing wins, and they had also some unusual results that kind of resulted in them being battle-tested and them digging deep. Like, they had to go 5 with USC both times, and then they beat UCLA in straight sets, which is the only non-5-set loss for UCLA this year. And then they unfortunately suffered some tough losses along the way, but I thought Oregon was better than that. I thought Oregon was a legit team, and Kansas's conference record going into this was 8-8, and then their overall record was 17-11. So I think it's safe to say Kansas kind of shocked the world. Kansas was led by Caroline Bien, who had 13 kills. Caroline Crawford had 12 kills. She hit 400. And Jenny Mosser added 10 kills. I knew Kansas was somewhat impressive, but I didn't think they'd be impressive to the point where they would get past Oregon. I think everyone had Oregon going to the second round, other than like Kansas fans. So the thing that stood out to me was that they held Oregon to only 190 in terms of hitting percentage, and they forced Brooke Nuneviller to play hero ball as she had 17 kills, which isn't bad. She hit 234, which is also pretty decent. Nothing else really stands out to me other than the fact that Kansas really served tough against Oregon. Oregon missed too many serves, and then Kansas had 6 aces, which is darn right impressive. So, and then also Kansas outdug Oregon 56-51, but that's not by too much. Oregon was led by Brooke Nuneviller, who had 17 kills, like I said, and then Taylor Borup had 10 kills. That was it when it came to all the players in double digits in terms of kills for Oregon. All in all, I think Kansas was waiting for this tournament to show its hand and prove that it is the dominant team. But it wasn't just that matchup. Kansas, in the round of 32, defeated Creighton, the 14th seed, on its home floor in 4 sets, as Kansas stomped on them in the first set 25-13. Second set, Kansas won that set 26-24. And then Creighton won the third set 25-19. And then Kansas won the fourth set 25-22. Kansas was very impressive. Caroline Bien had 21 kills, while Jenny Mosser added 16 kills. Caroline Crawford added 9 kills, and Rachel Langs chipped in 8 kills. Some of the stats that stood out to me were the blocks. Kansas doubled up on Creighton in terms of blocks. Kansas also hit 302, and while Creighton did hit 245, they had 3 players in terms of players in double figures in terms of kills. And while they were outdug 67-61, they narrowly lost the serve battle, as Kansas had 7 service errors compared to Creighton's 5 service errors. All in all, I think Kansas had a lot to prove, and honestly, they proved it when it came to winning the first round matchup against Oregon and then beating Creighton. And it's rather impressive just because Creighton is a very good team. They had 30 wins going into this match. Well, 31 actually. 30 going into the tournament. And having that home court advantage really meant a lot for Creighton. And they only lost 3 matches all year. One was to Nebraska, the other was to UConn, and the other one was to St. John's. I was not expecting Kansas to go this far, but Kansas has our attention, and they have pretty much put the Big 12 on its back along with Baylor and Texas. So good for Kansas. I am very impressed by them, but they will have to take on a very talented Pitt team. But we'll see how that goes. So the other seeded team that fell was Kentucky, and the team that did it to them was Illinois, as Illinois in the first round took down West Virginia. Now, West Virginia was not overly impressive. They finished with the same record as Kansas in terms of conference play. West Virginia came in 19-10, while Illinois was 21-11. The big thing for Illinois, however, was they were super duper battle tested in terms of the Big Ten. Like the Big Ten, you're going to get matches that are going to be all out to you. You're going to get like a legit opponent every time. Whether it's Nebraska, Wisconsin, Penn State, Minnesota, Michigan, heck, even some of the other teams like Illinois, or I'm sorry, not Illinois, Northwestern, Rutgers, heck, even Maryland was semi-legit. But for Illinois, they came back after losing the first set against West Virginia, and they wound up winning the next 3 sets. Illinois was led by Raina Terry, who had 18 kills, while Megan Cooney chipped in 15 kills. Jessica Nunge had 13 kills. Kennedy Collins had 11 kills, and Kyla Swanson added 10 kills. All those players that I mentioned were the only players with kills. Everyone else didn't have a kill, and those were 5 players that were in double digits in terms of kills, so good stuff. Some stats that stood out to me were Illinois hit 306 compared to West Virginia's 184, and then Illinois had 76 digs compared to West Virginia's 68. Something else that kind of stood out were the blocks, as Illinois outblocked West Virginia 11.5-6, which is kind of impressive. And then they also won the serve battle, honestly, and West Virginia was led by Adrian L., who had 19 kills, while Kristen Lux chipped in 12 kills. That was that in terms of double digits in terms of kills. Their next kill leader had 5, and that was Emmy Ogogor and Brianna Lynch. So there was that right there. So all in all for Illinois, I was rather impressed. I knew they would get past West Virginia, but they had a lot of things go their way in terms of stats. Now, their matchup against Kentucky, woo, Nelly, I don't think anybody predicted this. Illinois is a legit team. I will say that. Illinois is legit. However, I don't think anybody would have predicted Illinois to upset the reigning national champion. And keep in mind, Kentucky was the home team, and Kentucky has quite a bit of players like Allie Stumler. I said last week they had Madison Lilly still, but that was a mistake on my part. It was Allie Stumler who was the SEC Player of the Year. And they also had a lot of other players. And they also had Craig Skinner, the mastermind and head coach of Kentucky. And I didn't think Kentucky would lose in the round of 32. I don't think anyone predicted that. As Raina Terry led the team in kills against Kentucky with 27 for Illinois. Megan Cooney chipped in 17 kills, while Kennedy Collins chipped in 10 kills. For Kentucky, they did a great job of limiting Kentucky's attacks, as they only hit 208. Kentucky was led by Allie Stumler, who had 13 kills. Maddie Skinner added 11 kills, and Reagan Rutherford chipped in 10 kills. And like I said, Kentucky hitting 208 is a little uncharacteristic. Now, Illinois, on the other hand, they hit a whopping 331, which was very impressive. And what else was impressive was that Illinois outdug Kentucky 71-59. That is going to win you a lot of games, in my opinion. And then in terms of blocks, Illinois didn't win that battle by a landslide compared to the dig battle. And they didn't really win the serve battle all that much. But they still excelled in the hitting department and the digging department. And all in all, they also held Kentucky to negative 0.4 when it came to the third set. Like the third set, Illinois stomped on Kentucky 25-10. I don't think Kentucky has had a terrible set like that since they faced Creighton. So all in all for Illinois, they definitely proved a lot. Kentucky, on the other hand, it was a rough loss for them. And they only had 3 seniors on their team. In their defense, Kentucky did have 3 seniors on their team, and it's tough to repeat as champions, especially when one of your talented players goes over to Baylor to team up with another star outside hitter who was the AVCA Player of the Year. But I digress. So, for Kentucky, it sucks that they lost, as there will be a new NCAA champion, but Kentucky had a fantastic season all around. They only lost once in SEC play. Yes, they lost once last year in SEC play, but that was to Florida. This time, Kentucky only lost to South Carolina, which I think everyone was surprised at that matchup, but they swept the season series against Florida, which isn't easy, and they not only swept Florida, they swept them both times. Like, oof. Hoo boy. So, Kentucky, while they are out, they had a phenomenal season. Illinois, on the other hand, will face a very tough Nebraska team. They are the 10th seed. This will be played at the University of Texas. And honestly, it's going to be tough to take down Nebraska. Both of the times that Illinois played Nebraska, they lost both times in straight sets. So I think the Fighting Illini have their work cut out for them, but we'll see what happens. Like I said earlier, it's tough to beat a team 3 or 4 times a season, so we'll see what happens. Jumping back to the NCAA tournament, let's preview some NCAA women's volleyball tournament action, and then I'll send you all on your way because I hear there's a big football game going on, and it's between the Bills and the Patriots. Nothing more needs to be said. Anyway, so the first Sweet 16 matchup or regional final consists of Louisville versus Florida. So for Florida, they have not lost a set this postseason, and the same can be said for Louisville, as Louisville defeated UIC and Ball State, as Ball State actually won their first NCAA tournament game since 1995. Florida, on the other hand, defeated Florida A&M and Miami. The Miami win was very impressive. I think everyone picked Miami to get past Florida in the round of 32. But Florida, I'm actually impressed because I thought Florida was underachieving this year. But their work is going to be really cut out for them as they take on a very talented Louisville team. And also, I did not know this. One of Florida's players, if I'm not mistaken, Tara Caesar, that's her name. She is not playing in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament for Florida because she said in an Instagram post she is focusing on her mental health. And I totally respect that decision. everyone's got to put their mentals first. And like Marshawn Lynch said, take care of y'all chickens, take care of y'all bodies, take care of y'all mentals. When he said take care of y'all mentals, he really meant it, because that's something you cannot afford to lose. But back to Florida, Louisville. Florida is going to need to play near perfect if they want to take down Louisville. So we'll see. So that's the first matchup in the Sweet 16 region in the upper left bracket. The second upper left bracket Sweet 16 matchup is Ohio State versus Georgia Tech. Ohio State beat Howard in 3 sets and defeated Tennessee in 4 sets as they take on a Georgia Tech team that swept the Citadel and that swept Western Kentucky. So Georgia Tech, in my opinion, is probably everyone's favorite that is probably going to win this matchup. And Brad says, haha, yes, Beast Mode is right about that. Facts. Like, that is definitely a great Marshawn Lynch quote. Take care of y'all chickens and whatnot. Take care of y'all mentals and bodies. Back to Ohio State, Georgia Tech. This is probably going to be the matchup of the Sweet 16. Because it's 9 versus 8. Let's start off with that. All 9 versus 8 matchups are great for the most part. But Georgia Tech is such a drastically improved team. They defeated Pitt. They went toe-to-toe with Louisville. And while they did have a few bumps along the way in terms of losing to Notre Dame and UCLA, Georgia Tech has drastically improved. And it's thanks to the two-headed monster that is Julia Bergman, who is the ACC Player of the Year, and Mariana Brambilla. So if those two are on point, Ohio State's going to have a tough time dealing with that. But Ohio State has been impressive with Emily Landit and a few other top players as well. I think for Ohio State, the key to this is going to be defense. Like, obviously, Brambilla and Bergman are going to get theirs, but it's all about limiting them to the best of their abilities. And we'll see if all of the matches that Ohio State played in terms of them getting toughened up, like the Nebraska matchup, the Wisconsin matchup, the Purdue matchups, the Penn State matchups, have toughened them up for the situation. Because some people are saying Ohio State can get hot at the right time, but to me, I have Georgia Tech winning. I had them winning in my bracket, but you never know with Ohio State. Ohio State has come a long way, and I think the Buckeyes are going to make this a very tough matchup for Georgia Tech, but I expect Bergman and Brambilla to go off. Jumping down to the bottom left bracket of the Sweet 16, we have number 5 Baylor versus number 12 Minnesota. Baylor and Minnesota have not lost a set in this tournament as both teams swept their first 2 matchups. Baylor swept Texas A&M Corpus Christi, while they also swept Washington State in the round of 32. Minnesota, on the other hand, swept South Dakota in the first round, while they swept Stanford in the round of 32. And I admit, I didn't think Minnesota was actually going to win that matchup. I actually picked Stanford to upset Minnesota. I will gladly eat my crow and say that I was completely wrong on that one. And believe it or not, Minnesota actually swept Stanford for the first time in its team's history. I did not know that, and I am downright impressed that Minnesota was able to do that. So the key for Minnesota in order to beat Baylor is also going to be their defense, because Yassiana Presley and Avery Skinner are both 2 talented outside hitters. But in order for that to happen, they're going to need to have CeCe McGraw just dig all over the place, and they can't just bank on Stephanie Samity alone. Yes, she is the reigning Big Ten Player of the Year, but volleyball is a team sport, and they got to get other hitters involved. But they have been doing a better job of that. I think Minnesota, if they distribute the ball around when it comes to their offense, I think their offense will be tough to stop when it comes to Baylor. But Baylor also has some tall players like Presley, Cara McGee, and I think her little sister's on the team as well. Don't know if she's in the starting rotation, but all in all for Baylor, I think Baylor is going to be a tough little matchup for Minnesota, especially since Baylor is going to be hosting this matchup. So that's something you also have to remember as well. And then the final bottom left matchup when it comes to the NCAA Women's Volleyball Sweet 16 consists of Wisconsin versus UCLA. So UCLA they haven't really had the roughest tournament. They swept Fairfield in their first round matchup, but then they had to outlast UCF in 5 sets. UCF actually led the match 2-1 at one point, and they actually led, I think it was 13-9 until UCLA used a 6-0 run to eventually take the 4th set and then just steamroll their way into the 5th set. McMay was obviously McMay because she's just a talented player. She's the Pac-12 Player of the Year for the 2nd time, as she basically, I wouldn't say she carried the team, but she didn't want to lose. That was the thing, because she does not want her season or her volleyball career in terms of the collegiate level to end just like that. So I gotta give mad kudos to UCLA, but they do take on a very tough Wisconsin team as they swept Colgate and swept Florida Gulf Coast. Wisconsin's going to be very tough, especially at Wisconsin. UCLA is going to need to do everything in its power to make sure they get other players involved, and it's not just the McMay show, because if McMay has to take 50 to 60 swings, it's a recipe for disaster for UCLA, because Wisconsin has a lot of players that can dig the ball really well, and their block is really good with Dana Redke at the middle blocker position, and then they also have Devin Robinson, and then I think it was Grace Loberg. It was one of those returning players for Wisconsin. Not entirely sure, but I think it's Grace Loberg who is at the right side hitter. So all in all, for Wisconsin, their defense can basically shut down UCLA, but the offense has to pick it up themselves. But all in all, I'm not overly concerned for Wisconsin, but they just can't underestimate UCLA. UCLA didn't get this far for nothing, and UCLA did have a great chance at winning the Pac-12. The problem was that they unfortunately, they kind of choked. And yes, Grace Loberg does play the right side hitter. Yeah, I'm thinking of one of the other players that's out for Wisconsin, which is very saddening, but I wish her the best. So Grace Loberg is one of the offensive powerhouses for Wisconsin. Then you also have to deal with Lauren Barnes at the libero position. Sydney Hilly does a great job at the setter position. And then Georgia Savita does an outstanding job as the defensive specialist. It's absolutely amazing. This team does not have too many flaws. Izzy Ashburn comes in every so often, and it's really just hard to believe that Wisconsin didn't win it last year. Danielle Hart is the other player that's out for Wisconsin for the entire season. So we'll see if Wisconsin can do away with UCLA. It's a rematch of 2019 second-round matchup. So that's something to note. Jumping up to the upper right-hand portion of the bracket, in the Sweet 16 we have Pitt versus Kansas. So this is the first of 2 non-ranked versus ranked matchups, as Pitt is the number 3 seed. They got past UMBC in straight sets, and then in the round of 32, they had to defeat Penn State, its interstate rival, which that must have been a big win for them, especially it's against a very tough and talented Penn State team. I think Penn State was probably the most underrated team in this tournament, as Penn State gave Pitt all it could handle, but Pitt was able to ultimately come out. I'm pretty sure every Pittsburgh fan or every Yinzer was probably just overzealous when it came to that matchup, even though some Pitt fans probably won't root for Penn State and vice versa, but I digress. So Kansas, on the other hand, like I said, they swept Oregon and defeated Creighton in 4. They'll be playing Pitt in the round of 16 or the Sweet 16. On paper, this says mismatch, but don't underestimate Pitt, or don't underestimate Kansas. The most dangerous team in the NCAA tournament is a team that's the underdog. And for me, I think Kansas can keep up with Pitt, but you look at Pitt's options. They have Serena Gray, the transfer from Penn State. They have Kayla Lund, Chinaza Ende, Sabrina Starks, the list goes on and on. They even have Lecator member Manet, and she's not even that tall, but she can really jump out the gym. For Pitt, their offensive options know no bounds, and their block is also good, as Gray can specialize as a blocker as well. Same with Lund and Ende and Starks, and the list goes on and on. Kansas will need to play near perfect if they want to take down Pitt, but I think it's going to be an exciting matchup. I do have Pitt winning this one. Again, I will eat my crow or Jayhawk if I am wrong. So the next matchup in the upper right-hand portion of the Sweet 16 consists of number 11 BYU versus 6 seed Purdue. So this is quite the fascinating matchup. So BYU swept Boise State in the first round and then took down Utah in the Holy War 2.0 in 4 sets in the round of 32 as they take on a Purdue team which swept Illinois State but actually had to rally back from 0-2 to defeat Dayton, which was one of the hotter teams going into that matchup, in 5 sets. So for Purdue, if they want to beat BYU, they're going to need to play sound, solid volleyball. In the first 2 sets against Dayton, they just looked out of it. I don't know if it was because Dayton was such a great team, but Purdue was not playing Purdue volleyball. Now, Dayton was obviously a great team. They had won 20 matches in a row, and they had momentum from most of their matchups, and Dayton has some talent on that team. They have a lot of talent on that team, and they don't get the credit they deserve just because they're not in a Power 5 conference. And then also, Dayton took down a very tough Marquette team, which also was not in a Power 5 conference. Marquette was a runner-up in the Big East Conference tournament. So for Purdue, they really have to be wary of BYU's all-around defense. Their block is good. They have to slow down Kenzie Kerber. Like, Purdue cannot just bank on Grace Cleveland and Caitlin Newton. It has to be other players stepping up. But I think for Purdue, I think as long as Caitlin Newton is having a solid game and they're getting other players involved and their defense is just sprawling around on the court, I think Purdue can win this game. But I had BYU winning this matchup just because BYU, despite them not having the greatest of competition, they have been consistent more often than not. Like this year, BYU only had 1 loss, as that 1 loss was to Pitt, but BYU comes in with 30 wins, while Purdue comes in with 25, but that doesn't really matter. Like, on paper, Purdue is certainly more battle-tested, but when it comes to BYU, you can never fully predict what they can do, because everyone seems to count out Purdue they seem to count out BYU, and then BYU just suddenly erupts in the NCAA tournament. Hence the case being in 2013 when they made it all the way to the NCAA championship, where they fell to the eventual champion Penn State. So there's that. So we'll see what happens when it comes to BYU and Purdue. That's also going to be a great matchup right there. I look forward to that matchup. Now jumping down to the bottom right-hand bracket of the Sweet 16 tournament bracket, we have Illinois versus number 10 seed Nebraska. So Nebraska versus Illinois. Big Ten matchup right there. Problem with Illinois is, can they really imitate their success the first 2 rounds and take down a very talented Nebraska team? While Nebraska has been up and down, I will say this about Nebraska. They're very talented. I think they are getting everything together. They finished second in the Big Ten Conference, which is no easy feat. And I think Nebraska has overcome its inconsistencies. Now, for Illinois, other than that win over Kentucky and the win over Penn State, they haven't really had too many wins that have screamed, this team is legit. So this is Illinois' chance to turn back the clocks to 2000 and I think it was 16 when they last made it was either 2018 or 2016 when they last made the Final Four. Either way, this is Illinois' chance to prove to everyone that they can take down the big dog one of the big dogs when it comes to the Big Ten. It would be a huge win for Illinois just because they have two Olympians, or they had two Olympians on their team back in the past. So I think for Illinois, they're going to have to play around the block of Nebraska and force them to make mistakes. Fortunately for Illinois, they won't have to deal with going to Lincoln to play Nebraska at Nebraska, because that would be a complete nightmare. Nebraska is one of the tougher gyms to win at. So there's that. And then the last Sweet 16 matchup we have to go over is 15 seed Washington versus 2 seed Texas. So Washington is trying to make its return trip to the Final Four as they swept Brown in the first round and they impressively swept Hawaii. I did not think they would sweep Hawaii. Hawaii did outlast Mississippi State in 5 in the first round, which was kind of surprising but kind of impressive. But Washington straight up manhandled Hawaii in that round. I was surprised at that. So Washington, however, will face a very tough Texas team. Texas swept Sacred Heart and swept Rice in the first 2 rounds, as Texas has pretty much their entire team back from last year. They have Logan Eggleston, Asia O'Neal, Breon Butler. The list goes on and on for Texas. Washington also has some talented players on their roster, such as Sam Drexel, Marin Grote, Lauren Bays has adapted well to the libero position. Ella Mae Powell has done a great job of setting up the offense. And Brad said it best, underdogs. That's very, very clever of you, Brad. And I think Washington is playing with house money. Texas obviously is the number 2 seed, but they have the pressure of being the heavy favorite. Washington, on the other hand, is playing with house money. I think Washington does have a definite shot at defeating Texas. The thing is that can they serve and pass better than Texas? I think they can, but it's just they have to play near perfect. I'm not saying if they don't play near perfect, they're going to lose. I'm saying that against a team like Texas, this is not your standard typical run-of-the-mill opponent. But for Washington, they have been battle-tested. They've had their ups and downs. They had their impressive wins over UCLA, Oregon, Washington State, Utah. The list goes on. And then they had their heartbreaking losses, which included to Ohio State in non-conference play, to UCLA, to Washington State. The list goes on and on. So I think for Washington, again, they're the underdogs, like Brad said, but I think that could be their edge. Yes, it is going to be tough to beat Texas at Texas, but Texas is not invincible when playing at the University of Texas. I think for Washington, if they, like I said, serve and pass well, their defense basically outdoes Texas in everything. I think Washington has a great chance, but again, they have to slow down Logan Eggleston, and then they also have to watch out for the top spin serve of Nalani Iosia. And all in all, I think Texas is a very good serving team, and I think when it comes to the Pac-12, they have had to deal with a lot of really good serving teams like UCLA and USC, even though they didn't make the tournament. And Oregon was pretty solid at the service line as well. So I think some of those past matchups in the Pac-12 have prepared Washington for this. Texas, on the other hand, they just have to have their offense play as great as they can. Now, for Texas, the Sweet 16 has kind of been their house of horrors. I'm not trying to say they will lose, but let's take it back to 2019. They were the 2 seed, and they faced Louisville, the 15 seed. Louisville wound up winning in 5. So it is possible for Washington, but Texas is kind of... I had Texas winning the whole thing, just because they lost last year and they returned practically their entire roster, and they were the number one team for 95% of the year until they lost to Baylor. So all in all for Texas, I do have them winning, but I would not count out Washington. And I would not be surprised if Washington and Texas went 5. I think it's going to be a fun little matchup right there. I think that's my under-the-radar matchup right there. So that is going to do it for my little previews of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I Sweet 16. And that, my friends, is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, it's time to drop that beat because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you very much for tuning in to Set Point. I really appreciate you all. If you were tuning in live on Spreaker, I appreciate you. If you were tuning in on the playback, I appreciate you. If you were tuning in the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. If you were tuning in at all, I appreciate you. Thank you to Derryl Trujillo, my guest, for being on the first part of the show. I greatly do appreciate you. And thank you to the chat room, Brad Buckingham, for popping into the chat room, as well as Pierre Moss. I do appreciate you two for popping in and saying hello. For everyone here at iSports Radio, and for my guest, Derryl Trujillo, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the volleyball that's going to be happening this weekend. Enjoy the rest of the week. And I will see you this Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Have a great night, everybody. Peace!